palace of the queen stood high above the city of New Avalon, shining like glass touched by morning light. Its towers reached the clouds, and the walls sparkled silver under the suns of the twin sky. Inside that palace, the queen of humanity, Evelina, ruled over all the worlds that stretched through space. Her throne was made from steel and crystal, and her crown had lights that gleamed like captured stars. The queen had everything one could dream of: beauty, power, and thousands of voices singing her name. Yet her heart was full of pride. She believed no one was her equal. When she spoke, people bowed. Planets obeyed. No, planets obeyed. No man or woman dared to speak back to her. None except one. Captain Aaron Cole was a soldier of quiet strength. He came from a small mining world and climbed through the ranks, not because of family or fortune, but because of his mind and courage. He had faced dangers beyond the edge of known space and brought back fleets that others thought lost. His men trusted him without question. His eyes always looked far away, as if he carried the weight of stars inside. When Aaron walked through the halls of the palace, guards stepped aside, servants whispered his name. Everyone knew that Queen Evelina favored his victories but disliked his humility. She wanted her soldiers to kneel. He only saluted.
Oh, yeah.
She wanted her name shouted. He only spoke of duty. The first time Evelina saw him, she smiled in a way that both admired and challenged him. "Tell me, Captain," she said during a council meeting, "are you proud of serving your queen?" Aaron bowed once. "I am proud of serving humanity, my queen. You lead them. But we all serve the same purpose." Her lips curved slightly, though her eyes darkened. From that day, she began to notice the way he held himself not as a servant, but as an equal standing behind courtesy. The court saw it too, and rumors began to spread. Many in the palace feared that one day the bond between the queen and the captain would break. She was the ruler of worlds, raised to believe she stood above all others. Aaron was the voice of the people, loyal but unbending. One evening, a festival was held to honor the victory of the outer fleets. The great hall was filled with music and laughter. Gold ribbons hung from the ceiling. Crystal lamps floated softly through the air. Nobles wore bright colors and heavy jewels, their talk a storm of pride and envy. At the center of it all, on a raised platform, Evelina sat, shining in silver. Aaron arrived late, his uniform clean, but simple. He did not wear new medals or decorations. He came not for glory, but because duty called him to appear. His calm face made him seem out of place among the pride and noise. When the queen saw him, a strange emotion crossed her face, something between anger and curiosity. She called his name loudly enough for the hall to fall silent. "Captain Aaron Cole," she said, "you have returned victorious again. Though rumors say you disobeyed my last command." Aaron stopped a few steps away from her platform. His voice was even respectful but firm. "There were civilians in that city, my queen. Destroying it would have shamed all of us. So I withdrew after securing peace." The nobles in the room exchanged nervous looks. The queen's gaze turned sharp. "You decided for yourself what was right." "I decided what was human," Aaron replied. Her laughter came softly, but it carried through the hall like a blade. "Human," she repeated. "And who are you to define that word for your queen?" She smiled. "Beautiful, cruel, and proud." Her words followed like arrows. She spoke of his low birth, his lack of manners, his simple mind. She told the court that a soldier should not think, only obey. Each remark was sharper than the last. Laughter rose from the nobles. Whispers filled the corners. Aaron stood still, his eyes calm, his back straight. He did not answer. He only listened as she poured her scorn without restraint. When she finished, expecting his apology, he did not bow. The silence that followed was pure and heavy. The lights flickered faintly above them. Then the captain took one slow breath, turned his back to her, and walked away. The hall fell quiet again. The queen's face froze, unsure if she had just won or lost something precious. The sound of Aaron's boots echoed across the marble floor as he left the palace behind. Outside, the air was cool and filled with the hum of the city far below. He looked once toward the sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. There was sadness in his eyes, but also peace. Behind him, the palace lights glowed like a cage of beauty and pride. Before him lay a far horizon open to every soul, brave enough to walk free. When Captain Aaron Cole left the Queen's palace that night, the cold wind of New Avalon blew across his face. The city seemed quieter than usual, as if the whole world held its breath. His heart felt heavy, but his mind was calm. He had done what he believed was right. In that great hall of glass, he had stood for something that could not be bent or bought. The streets below the palace were alive with lights and voices. Cars passed under the glowing arches, and traders called out their prices in the markets even at this late hour. But Aaron walked without looking at any of it. His footsteps echoed on the stone road as he moved farther, away from the towers of gold and toward the docks where ships waited in the mist. At the spaceport, workers loaded supplies for long journeys. Many recognized him at once. A few stepped aside with quiet respect. One young engineer, a woman named Nora, approached hesitantly. She had served with him once on the frontier station years ago. "Captain," she said softly, "is it true what they said in the palace? That you refused the Queen?" Aaron looked at her steadily. "I refused only cruelty," he said. "No crown is heavy enough to crush what is right." Nora nodded slowly, her eyes wide with both fear and admiration. "They will call you a traitor, sir." "Let them," Aaron answered. "They will forget my name someday. What matters is that the people remember mercy." He boarded a small transport ship and left New Avalon behind. The engines glowed blue as it lifted through the clouds, and the great palace soon became a silver in the distance. Days passed as he traveled across the fleet routes. Each system he crossed seemed simpler, more free from the noise of the capital. He stopped at mining colonies, farms on dusty moons, and frontier stations where the Queen's voice was only a rumor. Everywhere he went, people asked quietly about the story. They spoke of the festival, of how the Queen had shamed the captain before the nobles, and how he had walked away without a word. Some exaggerated the tale, others whispered it like something holy. To most, it was a story of courage against pride, of a man who dared to keep his faith and dignity. On a distant colony named Vega's Rest, Aaron found work helping settlers rebuild their broken defenses. The place had been damaged years ago during old border wars. The people there were tired but strong, trying to build lives out of dust and stone. They did not care that he had once stood before a throne. To them, he was simply a man who could fix a power grid, train young guards, and share his rations without complaint. There, under the sunlight of 2 red moons, Aaron felt peace for the first time in years. The sound of hammers, the laughter of children, and the quiet music in the evenings reminded him what it meant to live for something greater than pride. But news still spread, and it reached the Queen sooner than anyone expected. In the halls of New Avalon, whispers filled every corner. Ministers spoke behind closed doors about the captain who had left. His name was becoming a symbol among the working worlds. Young officers began quoting his words during training. Even some generals, tired of the Queen's endless pride, began to remember the man who chose conscience over command. Queen Evelina tried to ignore these stories at first, but they grew louder. Every report that reached her desk spoke not of fear, but of hope rising in places far from her reach. She read each document alone, her hands trembling slightly, though she would never admit it. None in her council dared to speak his name unless she demanded it. One night, she stood by her window, looking out over the shining city she ruled. The stars seemed close enough to touch, yet she felt strangely distant from them. She thought of Aaron's calm face, the way he had turned his back without rage, without a single word. The memory burned more than his defiance ever had. Pride told her that she had been right, that no one disobeyed the voice of the Queen, but another voice inside, softer yet sharper, whispered that perhaps she had lost someone whose truth might have saved her. Far away on Vega's Rest, Aaron spent his nights under open sky. Sometimes he would look up and wonder if the Queen still remembered him, not out of anger, but because he had once believed she could change. He did not hate her. He pitied her loneliness. A messenger ship sometimes arrived bringing supplies and news. Each time people gathered around, eager for updates. One evening, as the ship landed, a miner shouted out that men and women across 3 colonies were calling themselves the New Union. They said their symbol was a simple marker, hand open to the stars. They said it began with a man who walked away from a throne. Aaron only sighed and smiled faintly. "Let them live by their own honor," he said. "If the Queen cannot lead them with kindness, they will lead themselves." and though the night was quiet, an old soldier could feel that history itself had started to turn, carried by the choice he made the moment he turned and departed. Months passed on Viga's Rest, and the dust-covered colony slowly began to bloom again. The houses grew taller, roads were rebuilt, and gardens appeared among the stone. Captain Aaron Cole worked side by side with the settlers. He helped build solar towers, taught the young to read maps, and repaired machines that no one remembered how to use. Every morning, he woke before sunrise. The sound of wind mixed with the hum of distant engines. He liked those quiet hours when the world still slept. It reminded him that peace, even small and fragile, was worth any cost. The colonists respected him deeply. They never treated him like a hero, nor did he want them to. To them, he was simply Aaron, the man who fixed what was broken and listened when they needed strength. Yet, behind his calm eyes, he carried the memory of that great hall, of the silver crown, and the harsh words that had chased him away. Sometimes, as he watched the sun climb over the horizon, he thought about Queen Evelina. He wondered if she ever looked out from her palace and thought of the people who lived beyond her walls. He remembered the sharpness in her voice, the pride that had gleamed in her eyes. But he also remembered something else, the way she hesitated when she saw him turn away. It was almost as if for a single heartbeat she had regret, though her pride never allowed it to show. On Viga's Rest, life moved forward. Children played in the dust, and farmers laughed as they worked. At night, people gathered around fires, telling stories of the man who had stood before a throne and left with dignity. The tale grew with every telling. Some said he shouted at the queen before walking away. Others said he refused her crown, and never corrected them. The truth, he thought, meant less than the lesson. He did not want to be seen as a hero of rebellion. He wanted people to remember the value of kindness, even when power mocked it. Then one afternoon, a small transport landed outside the colony. It was an official ship from New Avalon bearing the royal crest. Everyone gathered around cautiously as the engine shut down and the ramp lowered. A woman in a long gray coat stepped out, her eyes tired but sharp. A messenger from the Queen. She looked straight at Aaron. "Captain Cole," she said, her voice carrying the weight of the capital. "The Queen requests your return to the palace. She offers restoration of your command and the Royal Medal of Remembrance." Aaron's brow tightened. "The Queen offers much," he said quietly, "but at what cost?" Clara did not answer at once. "Things have changed," she finally said. "The council is divided. Outer systems grow restless. Many still speak your name. The Queen believes your presence can unite the people again. Will you refuse your duty?" He looked at her for a long while. Round him, settlers watched in silence. He could see the curiosity in their faces, the hope that he might bring reason back into power. But he also knew what waited there, the cold halls, the same pride, the same crown. "My duty," he said softly, "is to the heart of humanity, not to one throne. Tell the Queen that if she seeks peace, she must first listen." Clara's expression changed, touched by something close to respect. "I will deliver your words," she said, and she returned to her ship. When the transport lifted off again, the people around Aaron began to whisper. Some asked if he would go back. Others said he should not. He raised a hand to calm them. "No more crowns or medals," he said. "We have work to do here. The future is built with hands, not speeches." As the days turned to weeks, more visitors began to arrive. Messengers, travelers, even soldiers, all wanted to meet the man who had turned from power. Some brought supplies, others brought stories of unrest spreading through the empire. Every world seemed to be waiting for something, though no one could yet name it. Aaron listened to them all, always patient, always calm. Inwardly, he feared that humanity stood at a crossroad. Pride and fear still ruled to many hearts. Yet wherever people found the courage to stand for mercy, he saw hope. And far away, inside her palace, Queen Evelina dreamed restless dreams. In them, she saw the face of the man she had humiliated. Each time she woke, she felt a strange emptiness. Her grand hall was filled with laughter and wealth, yet none of it brought peace. Sometimes she found herself standing by the balcony alone, whispering into the night, "Why did he walk away without anger?" No one ever answered her. Only the stars outside seemed to listen. On Vega's rest, Aaron looked at those same stars and wondered if mankind would ever learn. He did not know what fate awaited him, or her, but he understood one truth clearly now. The real power of humanity was not in crowns, weapons, or empires. It was in the courage to walk away from cruelty and the will to build again with open hands and clean hearts. Time kept moving, quiet but steady, across the worlds of the Empire. Rumors of unrest grew stronger, and the once peaceful colonies began to question the voice of the Queen. Every message that reached New Avalon spoke of people gathering in open fields to talk about honor, fairness, and freedom. The guards of the palace tried to keep these words from reaching the throne room, but whispers moved faster than any guard. The Queen could not escape them. Queen Evelina stood by her window, watching the great city continue below her. Shuttles glided between towers and soldiers marched across the parade grounds, their armor shining like silver. Outwardly, her empire looked perfect. But beneath that beauty, she knew cracks were forming. Reports from the outer systems arrived daily. Trade was slowing. Officers were disobeying cruel orders, and workers spoke Aaron Cole's name as though it meant courage itself. She felt both anger and confusion. At council meetings, she shouted that discipline must be restored. "One man cannot undo all I have built," she said to her ministers. But after they bowed and left the chamber, she stood alone, feeling uneasy. Her reflection in the hall's silver mirror looked strong, yet the woman behind the crown seemed smaller each day. One night, she could not sleep. She walked through the palace gardens, empty under the moonlight. The flowers glowed softly in the light of the twin moons, and the wind smelled of rain. She thought of that night when she had mocked the captain in front of her court. She could still see his calm face, unshaken by her loud pride. She had expected him to fall to his knees, or defend himself. Instead, he had simply turned and walked away. That act haunted her. It was not rebellion. It was something harder to understand. It was quiet strength, the kind she had never mastered. The next morning, she called for her advisor, Lord Brenner, a loyal man in his later years. His hair was white at the edges, but his voice remained clear. "Tell me truly," the Queen said, "do the people hate me?" He hesitated. "Majesty, they do not hate you, they fear you. But they follow another voice now, one that makes them believe they are more than servants." "Captain Aaron Cole," she said softly. "Yes, Majesty." She looked down at her desk where maps of the Empire lay open. Small red marks showed systems in disorder. "He did not raise a weapon," she said, half to herself. "He raised only a choice." Brenner nodded. "That is what makes him dangerous to pride and precious to hope." The Queen dismissed him and stood for a long time in silence. At last she whispered, "Bring him to me." Word was sent across the stars. The Queen did not demand this time, she requested. Her message reached Vega's rest within days. When Aaron read the message, he stayed quiet for a long while. Farmer friends stood nearby, asking what he would do. He read one line aloud. "The Queen asks for peace and understanding." He looked at the faces watching him, faces of those who still remembered her cruelty. "I will go," he said finally. "If she truly asks for peace, I must believe it possible." The journey back to New Avalon took a week. The stars passed slowly outside the window of his shuttle. He had left the city as a soldier who refused obedience. Now he returned as a farmer who carried truth. When he arrived, soldiers met him, but none drew weapons. They saluted instead. People in the streets whispered his name with both hope and disbelief as he walked toward the palace. Inside the great hall, the same place where he had been insulted, torches burned lower than before. The grand sound of music was missing. Only silence filled the air. Queen Evelina waited, dressed not in silver, but in simple white. When he entered, she did not sit on her throne. She walked down the steps and stopped before him. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then she said, "2 years ago, I made you stand here so I could mock you before my court. Tonight I ask you to stand here again so I can ask your forgiveness before the world." Aaron studied her face. The pride that had once controlled her eyes was still there, but softened now by humility. "Forgiveness is not something to be given like a medal," he said. "No? It is earned through what we do next." She nodded slowly. "Then will you help me earn it? The Empire is breaking. I cannot rule through fear any longer." Teach me how to lead with truth." The hall around them stayed quiet, but it felt as if the entire world was listening. Aaron finally said, "If you truly wish to change, start by hearing the people who have no voice. Rule for them, not above them." The queen lowered her head, something no one had ever seen her do. "Then I will begin today." For the first time in her long reign, she smiled not in triumph but in peace. Outside, the towers of New Avalon gleamed once more in the light of dawn. The city stirred awake to a new beginning, somewhere high above it all. The echo of that one choice, the choice to turn and walk away, had finally come full circle. It's not as defiance, but as the seed of understanding. The morning after the meeting between Queen Evelina and Captain Aaron Cole, New Avalon felt different. The streets, once heavy with soldiers and fear, now held the sound of quiet talk and open windows. Ships began to move freely again, traders smiling without worry of inspection or punishment. For the first time in many years, people in the Empire felt that change might truly be possible. Aaron stayed in the city longer than he had planned. The Queen asked him to walk with her through the places she had once ignored. Together, they visited the lower districts where the workers lived. The people stared in disbelief when they saw their queen walking, without guards beside the man she had once insulted before the whole court. She stopped to listen to them, to watch their lives, to feel what her power had forgotten. She saw children playing in dusty yards, families eating simple meals, and miners returning from the tunnels with tired smiles. One old man bowed deeply and said, "Majesty, we never thought we would see your face here." The queen helped him stand straight. "Then remember this moment," she said softly. No ruler should be far from her people. Aaron watched her as she said the words, and for the first time, he believed she meant them. News of her change spread quickly across the empire. People who had once spoken only in whispers now spoke openly of hope. Officers who had followed strict orders out of fear now looked to the queen with cautious respect. They no longer saw her as untouchable, but as human like them. And behind every rumor of her new kindness was the quiet name of the man who had walked away but returned with peace. Still, not everyone was happy about the change. Some nobles hated the idea of power shared with common people. They gathered secretly, angry that the queen listened to a simple captain. One of them, Lord Brenner's rival, Count Laren, planned to remove Aaron quietly. He said that peace made weak rulers and weak empires. He sent his guards to capture Aaron one evening when the queen dined with her council. Aaron was walking through the royal gardens when he heard movement behind him. He turned without fear. A group of men approached, their eyes hard. "The Empire needs discipline, not softness," one of them said. Aaron only nodded once. "It needs truth more than fear," he replied. Before anything worse could happen, soldiers loyal to the queen appeared. They had been ordered by her to protect Aaron always. The attempt failed. When news reached Evelina, she sent Count Laren into exile and spoke before the council with firm resolve. "No man shall be punished for kindness," she declared, "and no power shall destroy peace once begun." Even her harshest critics were silent. The woman who once ruled with iron words now ruled with understanding, but with strength just the same. In the weeks that followed, Aaron helped form what he called the Union of Voices. It was not a government, but a gathering place where people from every world could speak freely of their concerns. The queen herself attended the first meeting, wearing simple robes without her crown. When she spoke, she said, "I once believed that rule was about command. I know it is about listening." The crowd stood in reverent silence. Aaron felt his heart lighten. He had seen rulers fall and cities turn to ash, but this moment of calm truth was worth all that loss. Years moved quietly after that. The queen rebuilt her rule on fairness. The old nobles who had hated her learned to adapt or fade away. Children grew up hearing stories of the time when a proud ruler changed because a single man refused to kneel. Artists painted it, teachers told it, and singers wrote songs about it, though Aaron never liked to listen to them. He decided, at last, to leave New Avalon once more. The queen met him at the palace gate. She wore no jewels, only a plain cloak. "Will you not stay to help me continue what we began?" she asked. He shook his head gently. "What we began belongs to everyone now. My place is among the people again." She wanted to argue but did not. "Then promise me only this," she said, her voice soft. That if you ever see me lose my way again, you will come back and remind me what you taught me tonight in the garden. Aaron smiled. Majesty, you do not need me for that. You have learned to hear the world yourself. He turned, just as he had on that night years ago, and walked through the gate. But this time there was no insult, no anger. The guard saluted, and the city beyond seemed brighter. The queen stood there, watching until he vanished into the crowd. From then on, she ruled with peace and humility until her last days. And somewhere among the distant colonies, stories continued to grow of the man who had been disrespected before the world, but had answered not with rage, revenge, or pride, only with the quiet strength to turn and depart. Long after both their names had passed into legend, the people of humanity remembered the lesson hidden in that story, that the greatest power is not to conquer, but to forgive, not to command, but to understand, and that sometimes a single step away from pride can become the path that saves an entire world.